Hi, my name is Javier Albornoz, and today we're going to be talking about Pro Tools. We're going to look at setting up a new file and take a little tour around the user interface. Pro Tools is a digital audio workstation, or the acronym DAW or DAW, and this software is commonly used for audio recording, audio editing, audio restoration, mixing, mastering, music composition, music production, and any other use that involves producing audio and or music. The first thing you're going to see when Pro Tools finishes loading is this dashboard with tabs showing Create, Recent, and Projects. So we're going to go with Create a Project, where we have the option of creating a new blank project. So the first thing you're going to see here at the top is where you're going to enter the name of your project. So any name that you enter here, whatever location is chosen, whether you are prompted for the location or you have already chosen a location here on your computer, it's going to create a folder with the name of the project that you label here. And within that, several folders that Pro Tools uses to store and manage files, as well as the actual Pro Tools document that you will open up the next time you're ready to work on it. So we're going to name it here. Let's just name Pro Tools Demo. And we have a local storage session. Other options here, this has to do with cloud collaboration of projects. And here we have the option to create from a template. Now, if you see here grayed out in the background, we have several template options. And essentially these right here, you're seeing several musical genres or styles. And when you choose one of these, Pro Tools is already going to open up with several instrument or audio tracks or both, and all loaded, ready so that you can start working. Now, sometimes these templates aren't going to be exactly what you want. And in this case, for this demo, we're going to start from a new project so that we can check out how you get started from scratch. So some of the more important things that we're looking at here are file type, sample rate, bit depth, and I/O settings. There's also this option here for interleaved. So let's talk about each of these options and what they mean. So the first option we're going to look at here is file type. So as you see here, the chosen file type that Pro Tools defaults to is the .wav file type, which is a WAV file. Now here it says BWF as well. That's referring to a broadcast WAV file. And that right now is not important. Essentially, the only difference between a broadcast WAV and a WAV file is that the broadcast WAV file type can carry metadata that sometimes is used when delivering files to broadcasters. So when you look here, WAV, and you also have the option AIFF. Now, both of these are high fidelity audio files. Essentially, you can go with either or, but more commonly, WAV files are the option that is chosen. So next here on the right, we have sample rate, and this is very important. The options you see here, you have several options, 44.1, 48 kilohertz, and way up to 192 kilohertz sample rate. So right now, and as you see by default, Pro Tools starts at 48 kilohertz. So we're going to go with that option. Under bit depth, we have several options, 16-bit, 24-bit, 32-bit float. So again, we're going to stick with what was set as default, which is 24-bit. I/O settings, you're going to choose your ins and out on your audio interface, whether that be your internal sound card on your laptop or a rack-mounted audio interface like an Apollo or an RME or something like that. So the I/O settings, the software settings, we're going to stick with last use because this has already been set up on this machine and most likely on any machine that you will be using. The checkbox here for interleaved, we're going to leave that checked, and we'll go into what that means and why. So let's go back to file type, broadcast, wave or .wav file. So as you know, there are several audio file formats. You're probably used to using MP3 format. Now the difference here is that MP3 are not normally used when we're working in production of audio, post-production of audio, because MP3s are compressed audio files. So the .wav or .aiff option are going to give you full bandwidth audio, and that's what we need. So let's talk about next, sample rate. Sample rate relates to the frequency, or you can think of it as pitch, of the audio material. Now it's measured in hertz, or in this case you're seeing 48 kilohertz, which just refers to 48,000 hertz. Now, what this means in summary, essentially, the human ear can hear from about 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. So when recording audio, it was determined through research and what we call the Nyquist theorem now that we follow, that in order to accurately digitize audio, we need to capture 2 points within every cycle of audio. So for the highest frequency that we're hearing, 20,000 hertz, if you double that, you're going up to 40,000 hertz, and essentially go up a little bit higher, and that's where we get to 44.1, just to be on the safe side. And that allows us to work with digital audio that is being captured completely and accurately. So the next thing we're going to look at is bit depth. Now, this is related to dynamic range or volume. And essentially, the higher the bit rate, the more or higher resolution you're going to be able to get when capturing the dynamics or the volume of your audio material. So if you're going with very low bit rate audio, which we're not even given that option here, you're going to degrade the quality of the audio, and it's where, you know, in the past, 8-bit audio sounds the way it does, kind of crunchy, not full bandwidth, because there wasn't enough resolution in the data that we were capturing. So the reason why we are going with 48 kilohertz and 24-bit audio, as you see here, is because that is the standard when working with any visual media, and that's what you will deliver files to an editor working with your audio. Now, the next thing we'll look at here is this option for interleaved. Now, essentially what that means, if this is unchecked, when you import audio files that are in stereo or 2-channel format, if this box is not checked, it's going to import and you're going to work with audio files that are split individually as left and right channel, or channel 1 and 2. Now, a lot of the times, most of the time when we're working with stereo material, it is easier and preferred to work with them as one stereo audio file, so that when you're cutting and manipulating the audio, you're not working with individually the left and right channels. Although if you needed to do that, you will still have the option to do that. So we are going to go with interleaved. So now that we're talking about audio channels, I want to mention quickly the terms mono, stereo, and surround, so we can clear up what those actually mean. So as I mentioned, mono, it's a single channel of audio. Stereo would be 2 channels of audio, usually panned hard left and hard right. Now, surround sound, there are various channel numbers for surround sound, but a common one would be 5.1. Now, this means that you're actually getting 6 audio channels. You have, rather than just left and right in stereo, you actually have a front left, front right, a center channel. That dialogue is usually coming from the center channel. You have your rear left, rear right, and what's called the LFE, which is the low frequency effects channel for all your sub material and bass and sound effects and in music and that kind of thing. Very low frequency sounds. Once you've created your project, the first thing you're going to see are the edit window and the mix window, which I've arranged here so that we can see both at once on our screen. Now, if your project opens and all you're seeing are the edit, or sometimes it's called the arrange window, you can go here to the window menu and you'll see both options. And you'll see a check mark on the one that you currently have selected. So let's take a look at some of the important things in the interface here. So here on your left, where it says tracks, is where you're going to see a list of all the tracks that you create, which are going to live here, and your audio material will live here along the timeline that you see, just like in most video editing software. Below that are your groups list, where we'll learn that in a later module, but essentially you can create groups of your audio events or tracks so that you can select and control various options as different groups. Over here on the right, where it says clips, is essentially your media bay or your audio pool, where you're going to see all the files that you'll eventually import, and you can actually drag them right into your arrange window from there. So let's go now to our mix window, and you have a similar column here that also is called tracks. And again, you're going to see any tracks that you create there, and you can disable or enable their visibility or select them, and it's actually even searchable if your session has a couple hundred tracks and you are having trouble finding a track or something like that. Groups, it works the same way as in the edit window. Let's take a look at some of the important features that you'll see in your edit window in Pro Tools. So first up here, you've got your time display. If you click on this drop down arrow, you'll see that you can choose bars and beats, minutes and seconds, time code, which is currently selected, feet and frames, and samples. Now over here on the right, you'll see that you have your normal transport controls that you would see in any video editing application. You've got stop and play, record and advance, and that kind of thing. So over here on the left, this is important in any DAW. This is where you're going to actually choose how you're able to move your audio events around. So with grid, we're going to have movement via whatever subdivision in your grid you choose. And in this case, we're moving by 1 frame. But if you see in the drop-down tab, you can actually choose different values. Now, if we were viewing our time display in bars and beats, this is going to turn into a musical value. Right now, we are on 8th note, and you have all your different subdivisions here. Now, dependent on what you have chosen, you'll actually want to see the same kind of thing, or maybe different actually here, where you can actually in the drop down tab choose how you're viewing your time display in your timeline as opposed to your transport bar display up here. So you have all the similar options, the same options that you see in your time display up here. Now, the other thing that you're given the option here to check or uncheck are other tracks along your timeline that you might want to see markers, tempo, meter, key, chord, some things that you'll use if you're producing music. And you can see here that we have our meter, markers, tempo, which you can open up, and you have your tempo line here that you can actually move around to one single tempo or use the equivalent of sort of keyframes as you would in video editing software to create a moving tempo. Now, so let's go ahead and take a look at the tools up here, because these are of course very useful. So you have right now selected, this is the multi-tool, because as you can see, they call it the smart tool. So you actually have 3 tools selected at once. And when we get into audio editing, you'll see how this is very useful and can actually make you pretty efficient. So the other tools that you have that you can individually select are your trim tool, which is going to let you trim the start and the ends of audio events or MIDI events. Your selector tool for doing exactly that, selecting events, and your grabber tool, which is going to allow you to grab events and move them around. You've got your scrubber tool that's going to play back individual audio events as you click on them, and you've got your pencil tool for drawing automation, or in the video editing world, the equivalent would be keyframes. In audio, it's usually referred to as automation. So if we go back here, we'll take a look at some of the other options other than grid. We've got slip, which is going to actually let you move events, audio or MIDI, along your timeline without any regard to the grid, even though it is chosen here. So you'll just be able to freely drag to any position. You've got shuffle, which is going to actually cause events to end up moving end to end and joining end to end to each other when you're moving them. And spot, which when you click on an event is actually going to bring up a dialog box where you can spot the event to a specific time code. Now let's go ahead and add some tracks so you can actually get started with working with audio in Pro Tools. So the first thing we're going to do is go up here to our menu, and where you see track, we're going to click and go to new track. Now the box that you're going to get here is going to allow you to add a variety of different types of tracks, not just audio tracks. So here, create, we can enter how many we would like to create. Let's for now say we'd like to create 4. Now, are they going to be mono or stereo, as we spoke about one channel or two channel tracks? So let's go with stereo with 2 channels on each track. Now here, we're going to choose what kind of track we're going to add. So right now, audio track is selected, but if we see in the drop-down tab, we actually have several different options. We have audio track, aux input, master fader, VCA master, MIDI track, and instrument track, along with presets that are available similar to the new file presets that Avid provides inside of Pro Tools. So for now, let's just go with 4 stereo audio tracks. Now, are we going to view them in samples or ticks? We're going to leave it as samples because this is not tempo based. Ticks is tempo based, so it's usually used for musical based tracks like MIDI or instrument tracks. So let's leave it as samples since these are audio tracks. Now, if we leave this name here audio, it's just going to add them and it'll incrementally add numbers to them since we are adding 4 tracks. Now, this is interesting here and can be pretty useful. If you click on that plus sign, you're actually going to get another row here where you can actually add different types of tracks in different amounts. So we can now add mono tracks, and you can set all of this up at one time if you know that you're going to need several different types of tracks. So what I know I do want to add, it's something that you're always going to need in every single one of your Pro Tools session, whether it's audio or music production, MIDI tracks, and no audio, or a combination of both. You are going to need a stereo master track. So let's go here, master fader. We're going to leave it again in samples. It's the time base that we use for audio. And it automatically named it to master. So for master, we're only going to have one stereo output, so we're going to leave it at one track. Then we click create. And now, if you see here in both your edit and your mix window, now we have these 5 tracks that we added are 4 audio tracks, audio 1, 2, 3, and 4, and up here in your arrange or edit window, audio 1, 2, 3, 4, as well as your master track here in your edit window, your timeline, and as well as your mix window here, your master track. So we're pretty much at this point ready to start importing and adding audio. So now that we've added these tracks, I wanted to go back to our track window that you have in your edit and your mix window here on the left. So now that you've actually added tracks, you can see that they're all listed here. So the great thing about these windows here are that they allow you to find your tracks. Say if you had a large number of tracks, they would be down here, and it's actually searchable, and you have different ways to sort them here. The other thing would be visibility. So you can see here that I'm unchecking these, and as I do, they disappear from both my mix and edit window. Now I haven't deleted them, and if there were any material there playing back on those tracks, they would still be there, but I am just getting rid of actually seeing them there. So that can be very useful as well. The other important thing, as you see here, so the input and output you see here under I/O is already defaulted depending on your I/O settings. So usually on a computer where Pro Tools is already set up and you're just opening your session, that's already going to be default. We have various analog inputs, and here my one output, which is my 5.1 monitor, but it's actually a stereo output. That's just what it's called for right now. So I hope you've enjoyed this tour of some of the important features of the user interface in Pro Tools and setting up a Pro Tools file. Check out the other tutorials for more specific modules on specific tasks within Pro Tools. Thanks.